High Arbiter Kethvarus stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the end of everything he had ever known approach from the darkness of space. 10,000 Krethal warships filled the viewscreen, their jagged hulls blotting out the stars as they advanced toward the heart of galactic civilization. The Marauders had finally united under a single warlord, a brutal creature named Gorath the Breaker. And now they had come to claim the prize they had been denied for centuries, Nexus Prime itself. The seat of the Galactic Council, the symbol of 12 species ruling the stars together. How many ships do we have? Kethvarus asked his military commander. 2,000. High Arbiter, and most of them are outdated. We have not updated our fleets since the humans left. 2,000 against 10,000. With inferior technology and crews that had not fought a real battle in decades. It was not a fight. It was an execution. Can we evacuate the civilians? There's no time. The Marauders will be in weapons range within 3 hours. Kethvarus closed all 4 of his eyes and felt the weight of his failures crushing down on him. 24 years ago, he had stood in the council chamber and called humanity primitive, worthless, unworthy of standing beside the great civilizations of the galaxy. 24 years ago, he had laughed when they walked away. Now his people were going to die because he had been too arrogant to see what he was losing. Broadcast a message, he said quietly, on all frequencies. To anyone who might be listening, what should the message say, High Arbiter? Tell them that the Galactic Council requests help from any species willing to provide it. Tell them that we are facing extinction. Tell them. He paused, the words sticking in his throat. Tell them that we were wrong, and that we are sorry. The message went out across the stars, a desperate cry from a dying civilization. For an hour, there was only silence. Then the stars themselves seemed to break open. Reality tore apart in 1,000 places at once, and ships began pouring through the gaps. Ships larger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 40,000 warships bearing the flag of the United Human Concordat emerged from hyperspace, their hulls gleaming with technology that made the council vessels look like ancient artifacts. Behind them came more ships. Rix dreadnoughts covered in living armor, Kaloni carriers that seemed to be grown rather than built, and the terrifying crystalline vessels of the silicon mines, their surfaces shifting and changing like living things. And at the head of this impossible armada flew a single vessel. Its name blazed across its hull in letters of light. The UNSS Defiance. Admiral Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of his flagship, gray-haired now and scarred by years of building an empire from nothing. But his eyes were still sharp, and his voice was still steady. Open a channel to the Marauder fleet. He ordered. Channel open. Admiral Gorath the Breaker, this is Admiral Marcus Chun of the United Human Concordat. You are ordered to withdraw your forces from this system immediately. Failure to comply will result in your complete destruction. Silence stretched for a long moment. Then the Marauder warlord's voice crackled across the channel, harsh and mocking. Humans? You are the primitives who ran away and hid in the darkness. Why should I fear you? Marcus smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile, because we are no longer the species you remember. And this is your only warning. Gorath laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Kill them all, starting with the human who dares to threaten me. The Marauder fleet surged forward, weapons charging, ready to prove that the humans were still the weak creatures the galaxy had always believed them to be. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Human weapons tore through Marauder shields like they did not exist, turning warships into expanding clouds of debris. With single shots, Rix fighters swarmed through the enemy formation like angry insects, their pilots moving with reflexes that no organic being should possess. Silicon mine vessels simply absorbed the energy from Marauder weapons and redirected it back at them. turning the enemy's strength into their own destruction by the time it was over. 8,000 Marauder ships had been reduced to wreckage, and the remaining 2,000 were fleeing into hyperspace, their warlord's flagship among them. Not a single Concordat vessel had been lost on the observation deck of Nexus Station. Ketpharos watched in stunned silence as the impossible victory unfolded before him. He had expected the humans to make demands, to force the Council to surrender, to take revenge for decades of humiliation. Instead, the channel crackled to life, and a familiar face appeared on the screen. President Elena Vasquez, older now but still carrying that fire in her eyes, looked at him from across the void. "High Arbiter Ketpharos," she said, and her voice was calm and clear. "The Marauder threat has been eliminated. Your people are safe." Ketpharos struggled to find words. "President Vasquez, I do not understand. We rejected you. We mocked you. We drove you away. Why would you save us?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "Because we are not like you. We never were." "What do you mean?" "You called us short-lived and emotional. You said we were too primitive to matter. But you never understood what those qualities truly meant." She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to look directly into his soul. "Our short lives teach us that every moment is precious. Our emotions teach us that every person matters. We do not have the luxury of holding grudges for centuries or building empires on the suffering of others. We only have time to do what is right, and saving us was right. Protecting the helpless is what humans do. It is what we always did, what you mocked us for. We did not come back for revenge. We came back because there were innocent people who needed help, and we had the power to provide it." Ketpharos felt tears forming in his eyes, something he had not experienced since he was a child. "What happens now?" he asked. Elena stood straight and addressed not just him, but every being in Council space who was watching. "The United Human Concordat extends one offer to the peoples of the former Council. You may join us as equals with full rights and full responsibilities. Or you may remain outside our borders and govern yourselves as you see fit." She paused. "But understand this. You are no longer the center of the galaxy. You never were. You just could not see past your own reflection." The transmission ended, and Ketpharos stood alone on the observation deck, surrounded by the wreckage of his pride. 50 years later, a monument stood in the central plaza of Nexus Prime. Now a thriving member world of the Human Concordat, 11 of the 12 Council species had joined within a decade of the battle, embracing the new order that treated them as partners rather than rulers. Only the Volanthi remained apart, a handful of worlds clinging to memories of glory that would never return. The monument bore the names of every human who had died during the probationary years, serving species who despised them, believing that their sacrifice would someday be recognized. At the base of the monument, an inscription was carved in 100 languages. They laughed at our mortality. They never understood. It is why we burned so bright. And standing before that monument, on the anniversary of the day humanity walked out of the council chamber, people of a dozen species gathered to remember what had been lost and what had been gained. They came to remember that greatness is not measured in years lived or power held, but in the courage to stand up when the universe tells you to kneel. They came to remember that the rejected can become the redeemers. And they came to remember that humanity had not left the council to prove a point, but to prove to themselves that they were worthy of the stars. Whether anyone else believed it or not, the galaxy would never forget what happened when they mocked humanity, and humanity would never stop burning bright. Elder Von Thal of the Mothran Collective had lived for 6,000 years, and in all that time, he had never been afraid of anything. The Mothran were the oldest species in the known galaxy, the founders of the Council, the keepers of knowledge that stretched back to the dawn of civilization. They had seen empires rise and fall, They had watched young species climb from the mud and reach for the stars, and they had always remained above it all, observing and recording, but never truly caring. But as his ship descended through the atmosphere of Nova Geneva, Elder Vornthal felt something he had not experienced in millennia. He felt small. The city below him stretched across an entire continent. Towers of crystal and steel reaching toward the clouds. Transportation networks flowing like rivers of light between districts that each held more people than some. Council worlds, and this was just the capital. One city among thousands on one world among hundreds. Elder, his assistant whispered beside him. Are you seeing this? I am seeing it, Vornthal replied. I am simply having difficulty believing it. 23 years ago, the humans had left council space in anger and shame. Rejected and mocked by the species they had served for 8 decades, 23 years ago. The Mothran had not even attended the final vote. So certain were they that humans did not matter. Now Vornthal was coming to them as a beggar, hoping to save what remained of the council from complete collapse. President Elena Vasquez met him at the landing platform, and the sight of her struck him like a physical blow. She was older now, her hair gray and her face lined with years. But her eyes burned with a fire that Vornthal had seen in only a handful of beings across his long life. The fire of someone who had been broken and had rebuilt themselves stronger than before Elder Vornthal. Elena said, and her voice was polite but cold. Welcome to Nova Geneva. I must admit I am surprised that the Mothran would lower themselves to visit our primitive civilization. The words stung. And they were meant to President Vasquez, Vornthal replied carefully. I have come to see what humanity has built, and perhaps to discuss the future relationship between our peoples. We have no relationship with the Council, Elena said. We made that clear 18 years ago. Things have changed since then. Yes, they have. Please follow me. I want to show you something. She led him through the city, and with every step, Vornthal's understanding of the universe shifted beneath him. He saw human children playing alongside Rick's younglings and Kaloni seedlings, laughing together without any thought of species or hierarchy. He saw silicon mines walking freely through the streets, their crystalline bodies catching the sunlight, working and living as equals among organic beings. He saw a memorial garden dedicated to the Hollow, the shadow beings that the Council had nearly driven to extinction, now thriving under human protection. How many species have joined your Concordat? Vornthal asked. 17 full members, with 12 more in the process of joining, Elena replied. Every one of them was either rejected by the Council or ignored by you. For millennia, we did not know they were suffering. You did not care to know. There's a difference. They reached a vast plaza in the center of the city, and Elena stopped before a towering monument made of white stone. Names were carved into every surface. Millions of names stretching up toward the sky. Do you know what this is? Elena asked. I do not. These are the names of every human who died during our probationary period. Soldiers who fought your wars, doctors who cured your plagues, engineers who built your stations, all of them serving species who despised them, all of them hoping that someday their sacrifice would be recognized. Vornthal stared at the monument and felt something he had not experienced in thousands of years. He felt shame. President Vasquez, he said quietly. I am here because the Council is dying. Our species are fighting among themselves. Our infrastructure is collapsing. Our people are starving. We need help, and only humanity can provide it. Elena was silent for a long moment. You called us evolutionary accidents, she said finally. You said we were too short-lived, too emotional, too fragile to matter. I know. Do you understand now how wrong you were? Vornthal looked around at the city, at the impossible things humanity had built in just 2 decades, at the alliance they had forged with species the Council had thrown away. I am beginning to understand. He admitted. Elena turned to face him directly. and her eyes were fierce. You never understood what our short lives meant. You saw them as a weakness, a sign that we were inferior. But you missed the truth entirely. What truth? We do not have time for your politics, your prejudice, or your pride. We do not have centuries to waste on petty feuds and meaningless hierarchies. Every moment is precious to us. Every day is a gift we refuse to waste. She gestured at the city around them. That is why we built all of this in 23 years. While you spent the same time watching your civilization crumble. We do not have the luxury of patience, so we act, we build, we create. We refuse to accept that tomorrow will be the same as today. Vornthal was silent. Processing her words, "You want our help," Elena continued. "You want us to return to council space and fix everything we left behind." Yes. Why should we? It was a simple question, but Vornthal found he had no answer. Why should humanity help the species who had rejected them, mocked them, used them, and thrown them away like garbage? Because it is the right thing to do, he said finally. Knowing how weak the words sounded, Elena smiled. And there was something sad in the expression. We thought so too. Once we spent 80 years doing the right thing, and we were punished for it every single day. Then you will not help us? Elena turned and began walking back toward the landing platform. I did not say that. She called over her shoulder. I said you need to understand something first. What? She stopped and looked back at him. We do not need your help. Elder Vornthal, we do not need your approval. We do not need your recognition, and we will never again ask for your permission to matter. Then, what do you want from us? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that is what frightens you more than anything else, is it not? Vornthal had no response. Elena continued walking, and after a moment, he followed her. There will come a time very soon when the council will face a crisis it cannot survive alone, she said as they walked. When that happens, we will be watching, and we will make our decision then. What decision? Whether to help you, or whether to let you experience the consequences of your arrogance. They reached the landing platform, and Elena stopped at the base of his ship. Go back to the council. Elder Vornthal, tell them what you saw here. Tell them that humanity has not forgotten what they did to us, but also tell them this. What? Tell them that we are not like them. We do not hold grudges. We do not seek revenge. We simply refuse to be treated as less than what we are ever again. As his ship lifted off from Nova Geneva, Vornthal looked down at the impossible city below and made a decision. He would tell the council exactly what he had seen, and he would make sure they understood that the galaxy had changed forever, whether they accepted it or not. Counselor Yevrani of the Kirix Collective stared at the report on her screen and felt something she had not experienced in over a century of life. She felt afraid 3 agricultural worlds in the outer territories had gone silent in the past month, their atmospheric processors failing one after another, and the emergency teams sent to repair them had returned with the same terrible news. The machines were human-made, and no one knew how to fix them. This is impossible. Yevrani clicked angrily at her advisors. These processors have been running for decades. They cannot simply stop working. They can. Counselor, her chief engineer replied, keeping his antennae low in submission, and they have. The humans did not sell us these machines. They leased them to us. And the maintenance contracts required human technicians to perform regular service, then hire new technicians. There are no new technicians. The humans took all their knowledge with them when they left, and they never shared the technical specifications with anyone. Yevrani wanted to smash something, preferably the face of whatever fool had allowed humanity to become so essential to Kirik's infrastructure. But she knew the truth. She was that fool. They all were. The council had been so certain that humans were primitive and replaceable that no one had bothered to learn what they actually did. Now they were discovering that humans had been everywhere, doing everything, holding the entire galactic civilization together with their short-lived hands, and they were gone across council space. The same terrible realizations were happening one after another. The Volante Dominion learned that their entire medical system was built on human pharmaceutical patents. And when the supply ships stopped coming, diseases that had been cured for generations began appearing in their populations again. The Gorath discovered that their mining equipment, the backbone of their economy, contained human-designed components that could not be replicated without human factories. The trading routes that connected council space had been secured by human mercenary fleets, and without those fleets, the Krethal marauders began raiding with impunity. Station after station went dark as human-maintained systems failed colony after colony sent desperate calls for help that no one could answer in the first 5 years after the Exodus. The Council tried to pretend that nothing was wrong. In the next 5 years, they could no longer hide the truth. High Arbiter Kethvaris sat in his private chambers on Nexus Prime, reading reports that grew more catastrophic with each passing day. The Kiriks were facing famine on a dozen worlds. The Volante were dealing with plague outbreaks that killed millions. The Gorath had withdrawn from the Council entirely, retreating to their homeworld and refusing to share their remaining resources. And worst of all, the Kiriks and Volante had begun fighting each other over the scraps of what remained. It was the first interspecies war in 300 years. And it had started because both sides blamed each other for driving the humans away. "We have to find them," Kethvaros said to his advisors. "We have to bring them back. We have tried." "High Arbiter," his chief diplomat replied. "Our scouts entered the Voidscar expanse and found nothing. The humans have either died or hidden themselves so well that we cannot locate them. Then send more scouts. We have sent hundreds. None of them have returned. The Voidscar is as dangerous as the legends say, and our ships are not capable of navigating it safely." Kethvaros slammed his fist against his desk, cracking the ancient wood that had survived 10,000 years of Volante rule. "We are the Galactic Council. We rule the stars. We cannot be brought low by the absence of a single primitive species. But they could. And they were 18 years after the humans left." Kethvaros made a decision he would have considered impossible when he was younger. He sent a diplomatic envoy into the Voidscar expanse, carrying gifts and apologies and an offer of full council membership. Everything the humans had ever wanted. The envoy was gone for 6 months. When they returned, their faces told Kethvaros everything he needed to know before they spoke a single word. "What happened?" he demanded. "Did you find them?" "We found them, High Arbiter." "And? What did they say? Will they return?" The lead diplomat, a young Volante woman who had been chosen for her skill in negotiation, looked at Kethvaros with something like pity in her 4 eyes. "They said they do not know us anymore." "What does that mean?" "It means they have built something new. High Arbiter, something that does not need us. Something that does not want us." She handed him a data crystal containing images and recordings from her mission. "You should see this yourself." Kethvaros plugged the crystal into his display and watched in growing horror as the truth unfolded. Before him, the humans had not died in the Voidscar. They had thrived cities that made Nexus Prime look like a village. Ships that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. Technology so advanced that the Volante scientists who analyzed the recordings could not even understand how it worked. And they were not alone. The recordings showed humans working alongside species that Kethvaros did not recognize. Species that must have come from beyond Council space. Species that had joined the humans in building a new civilization. "How many?" Kethvaros whispered. "How many species have joined them?" "At least 17 that we could identify, High Arbiter, possibly more." "And their population?" We estimate over 60 billion humans, plus unknown numbers of their allied species. Kethvaros felt the room spinning around him. 60 billion. When they had left with only 12 billion 18 years ago, they had been growing while the council was dying. There is one more thing. High Arbiter, the diplomat said quietly. What? They knew we were coming. They detected our ships before we even entered their territory. They let us pass because they wanted us to see what they had built. Why would they want that? The diplomat looked down at the floor. The human who met with us, a woman named Vasquez, she said they wanted us to understand something. Understand what? That they did not leave because they were weak. They left because we taught them that they would never be good enough for us. And so they decided to be good enough for themselves. Kethvaros stared at the frozen image on his display. A human city stretching to the horizon under an alien sun. Can we fight them? He asked, though he already knew the answer. No, High Arbiter. If they wanted to destroy us, they could do it tomorrow. Our fleets would not last an hour against their technology. Then why do they not attack? The diplomat shrugged, a human gesture that she had picked up during her mission. Because they are not like us. High Arbiter, they do not want revenge. They simply want to be left alone. Kethvaros sat in silence for a long time after his advisors left outside his window. The once great city of Nexus Prime was falling into decay. Its systems failing, its people starving, its glory fading into memory, and somewhere out in the void scar, the species he had called primitive and worthless was building a civilization that would outlast everything the Council had ever achieved. He had mocked them for being short-lived. He had never understood that their short lives taught them not to waste a single moment. Captain Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of the UNSS Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewport as his ship led the largest convoy in human history toward the unknown darkness beyond mapped space. 3,000 vessels stretched out behind him, carrying 2 million people away from the worlds they had called home for generations. And this was only one of 400 similar convoys departing Council space. The exodus had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Captain, his first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Park, called out from her station. We are receiving transmissions from Volanti Border Control, demanding that we turn back. Marcus smiled, though there was no warmth in it. What exactly are they saying? They claim we are violating trade agreements by withdrawing our maintenance crews from their stations. They say we will face sanctions if we do not return immediately. The bridge crew exchanged looks that mixed anger with dark amusement. Sanctions. Marcus thought they reject us for 80 years. They mock us and spit on us, and now they threaten us with sanctions when we leave. Send them a reply, Marcus said. Tell them that all agreements were terminated when Ambassador Vasquez delivered our withdrawal notice. Tell them they can file their complaints with an empty room, because there will be no humans left to listen. He turned back to the viewport as Sarah transmitted his message. Out there in the black, 12 billion human beings were packing their lives into ships and leaving behind everything the galaxy had taught them to build. Human engineers on Volanti stations were shutting down their terminals and walking away from machines only they knew how to repair. Human doctors in Kirik's medical centers were handing over patient files and boarding transports home. Human merchants were closing their shops. Human teachers were saying goodbye to alien students who had never treated them as equals. And human soldiers were laying down weapons they had carried in defense of people who called them animals. The Council expected humanity to scatter, to fall apart, to come crawling back within months begging for forgiveness. They did not understand humans at all. Navigation. Marcus called out. Confirm our heading. Confirmed, Captain. We are on course for the Void Scar Expanse. Estimated arrival at the first waypoint in 17 days. The Void Scar Expanse was a region of space that every Council species avoided. It was full of unstable stars and strange energy readings, and the ruins of civilizations that had died millions of years before any current species learned to walk. The council called it cursed, dangerous, impossible to colonize. Humans called it home 6 months earlier, before the final vote that broke all ties. Secret human exploration. Ships had mapped safe routes through the void scar and found something incredible. Hidden among the dangerous stars were hundreds of worlds perfect for human life. Worlds with clean water and breathable air and soil ready for farming. More than that, they had found the remains of ancient civilizations. Technology so advanced that it made council science look primitive. The council species had been too afraid to look, too comfortable in their old territories to risk the unknown. Humanity had nothing left to lose. So they risked everything, Captain, Sarah said with wonder in her voice. I am receiving reports from the other convoy groups. The Southern Fleet has made contact with the Vrix nomads. Marcus turned sharply. The Vrix? I thought they were just legends. Apparently not, sir, and apparently they hate the Council as much as we do. The Vrix were a species that had been expelled from Council space 1,000 years ago, for reasons no one remembered clearly. They had wandered the edges of known space ever since, and most people believed they had gone extinct, but here they were, reaching out to humanity with offers of friendship and alliance. It was the first sign that humans were not alone in their anger at the 12 species who ruled the galaxy. Over the following weeks, as the human convoys pushed deeper into the void scar, more surprises emerged. They encountered the Kaeloni, a peaceful species of plant-like beings who had been denied council membership because they could not fight wars. They found the silicon mines of Thetanine, artificial intelligences that the council had tried to destroy for being unnatural. They met the Hollow, strange beings of living shadow who had been hunted nearly to extinction simply because their appearance frightened the Volanthi one by one. The rejected and the forgotten came to humanity with the same question on their lips. Will you treat us the way they did? And humanity answered the same way every time. No, we will treat you as equals, because we know what it feels like to be treated as less. The united human frontier grew faster than anyone expected. Within 2 years, 200 colony worlds had been established in the Void Scar expanse. Within 3 years, the population had grown from 12 billion to 20 billion as humans who had been scattered across council space finally gathered together in one place. Within 5 years, the Human Concordat was formed, a new alliance that included 17 species, all of them united by their shared experience of being mocked and rejected by the council captain Marcus Chen. Now Admiral Chen stood on the surface of Nova Geneva, the capital world of the new human civilization, and watched as construction crews built towers that reached toward the sky. Beside him stood President Elena Vasquez, the woman whose courage in that council chamber had started everything. Do you think they know what they created? Marcus asked, watching a Kaeloni architect directing a team of human and Vrix builders working together on a new hospital. Elena shook her head. The council has not even noticed we are gone. Their reports say we are struggling to survive in the wasteland and that we will return within a decade. And when we do not return? Elena smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had learned to turn pain into purpose. Then they will wonder where we went. And by the time they find out, it will be far too late to stop what we have built. She looked up at the twin suns of Nova Geneva, casting golden light across a world that had been dead rock 5 years ago, and was now covered in forests and cities, and the laughter of children playing. We did not leave because we were weak, Marcus. We left because we refused to beg for respect from people who were never going to give it. And now? Now we build something better, something that treats every species as worthy, something that the council will never understand because they have forgotten what it means to struggle and to grow. Marcus nodded and said nothing more. In the distance, A ship bearing the flag of the Silicon Mines descended toward the spaceport, bringing new citizens to join the Concordat on the other side of the city. Rick's engineers were teaching human students how to navigate the dangerous currents of hyperspace, and somewhere out in the void scar, exploration teams were uncovering more ancient technology, more secrets that the Council had been too afraid to find. The galaxy believed that humanity had crawled into the darkness to die. They had no idea that humanity had gone into the darkness to be reborn as the last human. Transport crossed the border out of Council space. Admiral Chun had broadcast a single message on all frequencies: remember this day. The Council had laughed and forgotten. They would not be laughing for much longer. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of the Great Chamber, surrounded by 12 towering platforms where the rulers of the galaxy looked down at her like she was an insect beneath their feet. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was designed to intimidate. And after 80 years of visiting this place, Elena understood that this was exactly the point. Massive crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in darkness above, and floating platforms held the representatives of the 12 most powerful species in known space. Elena was 53 years old, and she had spent her entire career fighting for this moment. Today, humanity would finally receive full membership in the Galactic Council. Or so she had believed when she woke up this morning. High Arbiter Kethvarus of the Volanthi Dominion leaned forward on his platform, his pale blue skin catching the light as his 4 eyes examined her with obvious contempt. The Volanthi were tall and elegant creatures who had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and they never let anyone forget it. Ambassador Vasquez. Kethvarus spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. You come before us once again to request full membership for your species. Is that correct? That is correct, High Arbiter, Elena replied, keeping her voice steady and calm. She had practiced this speech 100 times, and she would not let them see her shake. Humanity has served as a probationary member of the Galactic Compact for 80 years now, longer than any other species in recorded history. A clicking sound came from the platform to her left, where the insectoid Kyrix delegates sat in a cluster of gleaming black shells and twitching antennae. They were laughing at her. Elena realized, and the sound made her stomach turn with anger. She could not show. 80 years is nothing, said Counselor Yevrani of the Kyrix Collective, her mandibles clicking between words. My egg clutch is older than your entire spacefaring civilization. Little mammal. Elena forced herself to breathe slowly before she continued. During our probationary period, humanity has contributed significantly to the stability and prosperity of Council space, she said, activating a holographic display that showed charts and images floating in the air around her. Our terraforming technology has made 47 dead worlds habitable for Council species. Our medical researchers have cured 6 diseases that plagued Volanthi colonies, and our engineers maintain critical infrastructure on over 300 stations throughout the galaxy. She paused and changed the display to show images of soldiers in human military uniforms during the Boundary War. 200,000 human soldiers gave their lives defending Volanthi colonies from the Krethol marauders, a conflict in which we had no stake except our commitment to our allies. The chamber was silent for a moment, and Elena allowed herself a tiny spark of hope. Perhaps they would finally see what humanity had done for them. Perhaps they would finally recognize. Laughter erupted from multiple platforms at once. Kethvarus was shaking his head, a gesture humans had taught him that he now used to mock them. Ambassador, he said, still chuckling. This is precisely why your species remains unfit for true membership in galactic society. Elena felt the hope die in her chest, replaced by something cold and hard. I do not understand. High Arbiter. Of course you do not, Kethvarus replied, because humans never understand anything beyond their own tiny lifespans and their own primitive emotions. He stood up, and his 7-foot frame seemed to grow even taller as he addressed the chamber. You speak of your contributions as if they matter. But what are they really? You terraform worlds because you breed like vermin and need more space. You cure diseases because your weak immune systems force you to develop medicine. And you fight because violence is the only language your species truly understands. The Kiriks clicked their approval, and the massive stone-like forms of the Goroth rumbled with what might have been agreement. Any beast can fight. Ketveros continued, his voice dripping with contempt. It takes a civilized species to matter, and humanity will never be civilized. Elena looked around the chamber, searching for any sign of support, but even the platforms of species she had considered friendly were silent. The ancient Mothran delegates had not even bothered to attend today, sending a clear message about how little they cared for humanity's petition. You call us short-lived. Elena said quietly, you call us emotional and primitive, but we have given everything we have to prove ourselves worthy of standing beside you. And that is exactly the problem. Ketveros replied, you are always trying to prove yourselves. Always seeking approval like a trained pet, seeking treats from its master. A truly civilized species would not need to beg for recognition. He looked around at his fellow council members and raised his hand. Let us vote on the human petition for full membership. All those in favor? Silence filled the chamber. Not a single hand or claw or tentacle was raised. All those opposed? 12 votes against. Unanimous rejection. Just like every time before, Elena stood in the center of that vast chamber, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her entire life. She thought about all the humans who had worked and fought, and died believing that someday their species would be respected. She thought about her grandmother, who had been part of the first human diplomatic mission to Nexus Prime, full of hope and wonder at joining a galactic community. She thought about her own children, who would grow up being told they were less than the aliens who ruled the stars. And something inside Elena Vasquez changed forever. Very well, she said, and her voice was calm and cold in a way that made several council members shift uncomfortably on their platforms. If humanity is not welcome as members of the Galactic Compact, then we will not remain as servants either. She reached into her diplomatic pouch and pulled out a formal document sealed with the emblem of United Earth. I am authorized by the government of humanity to deliver this message, Elena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. The human species formally withdraws from the Galactic Compact. Effective immediately. All treaties are void. All contracts are terminated. All human personnel will be recalled from council space within 90 days. For the first time, the laughter stopped. Ketveros stared at her with all 4 of his eyes wide open. You cannot be serious, he said. No species has ever voluntarily left the compact. Then we will be the first. Elena replied, you will be destroyed without our protection. Yevrani chittered. The marauders will eat your colonies alive. Perhaps, Elena said, and she was already walking toward the exit. But at least we will die free, instead of living as your pets. She stopped at the great doors of the chamber and turned back one final time. 80 years ago, humanity came to this chamber with open hands and open hearts, ready to learn and grow and become part of something greater than ourselves. And you spat on us for 80 years, mocked us, used us, and threw us away when you were done. Her voice echoed through the silent chamber. Remember this day. Remember that we did not leave because we were weak. We left because you taught us exactly how much our friendship was worth to you. The doors opened behind her, and Elena walked out into the cold light of the corridor. She did not look back in the chamber behind her. The council members exchanged uncertain glances, but within minutes they were laughing again, convinced that the humans would come crawling back within a year. They had no idea what they had just begun.